How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. We're sitting here with Kendra Gonzalez again, and we got another episode for you guys. This one's a little more serious, something to get in on a serious note, but it is Suicide Prevention Week. So we wanted to take a little hit on that and talk about kind of depression, anxiety, our own personal experiences, kind of anything that's happened to us, anything we want to get off our chest, or even just talk about, kind of bring some awareness to it and let people know that everybody's gone through it. It's not something that singular. It's not one person that goes through it. It's everybody. It affects everybody also. I mean, you may think it's just yourself, but there's other people around you that get involved also. So I'll turn to you guys. Anything you guys want to say about it? Danny, any personal experiences or anything like that you've had to deal with that you want to get off your chest?
That's what's going to be really interesting about this conversation is I have never personally dealt with depression or anything like that. So it's kind of hard. I hear like Joe Rogan talk about it all the time. Like he has a hard time wrapping his head around how people who experience that feel. Like he wants to understand how they feel, and I feel the same way. I'm like, I want to understand how those people feel because I cannot understand it.
Right? It's almost like trying to put your feet in somebody else's shoes, but they don't fit.
And like you think you might know, but you really don't. So I'm really curious to hear and talk about it.
Well, what do you know about it? I mean, what is it, if somebody says, "Oh man, I'm so depressed"? What's the initial reaction?
I think everyone's initial reaction, if you haven't dealt with it, is you think of the commercials on TV. You know, you think of all like the every prescribed medication from a doctor that's like, you'll feel better and the sun comes out after it's raining, and it's like, that's kind of, you think just like, oh, it's people who have lived in Seattle for too long, like, you know what I mean? Like you don't get enough sun, enough vitamin D.
That's a thing,
but that really is
real.
a thing. Yeah,
it's
no,
real.
That really is a thing.
But
that's
no joke.
The only reference point I have. So it's like, I don't really understand. Like for me, like if I see someone actually like say, if I see a video of someone, jumping off a bridge or something, I'm just like, how do you do that? I don't understand it. But then I'm not in their shoes and I don't know, there could be, chemicals going on in their brain that are different than mine, which are allowing them to think in a different frame of mind than I do. I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I'm a lot like Danny where I've never had to deal with depression or thoughts of suicide. I've had a pretty fortunate life. So my brain's never really had to deal with any of that. So I consider myself very fortunate, but I guess you could say I'm kind of have some anxiety with the thought of, like, I always talk about, like, as long as my kids don't murder anybody, I'll be happy. But you never really think about, it's like, oh, well, what if one of them commits suicide? That's like, you feel like yourself as a parent ultimately fell at that point because they brought themselves to, destroy their own life. So that can,
well, I guess, that'd be a crazy worry that you would have, is trying to make sure that your kids don't go down that path, or making sure that they don't have that type of depression or anxiety. For me, I don't really have I don't think I've ever gotten to that point of depression, like legit, to where I thought it'd be better if I just wasn't here type thing. I've had bad days. I've had anxiety. I think that's a big one. I think anxiety is a big part of it. That feeling of not having control, or of yourself, not of the situation, but yourself. But I don't necessarily know. I've never been in that point. I feel like I've had some really, really shit days. And I could imagine other people just probably have that feeling times 20 in a long period of time. It's not so much of just, oh, this is just a one bad day. It's like every fucking day is this bad day, When
you get that, like that money anxiety or money stress or some kind of issue in your life that's bringing you down, you get I've had like a fleeting second of like, wow, this feels really bad. But it's just a fleeting second. And then I'm like, okay, I can get out of this. Like you said, imagine that for a long period of time, that little tiny split second feeling just for a long period of time.
That's my thing. My big question is, like, you always see, like, when kids are in high school or something like that and they have that big breakup that just, like, ruins them. And they're like, this is the worst day of my life. Like, I can't imagine it getting any worse than this. And then you hear a story about someone that was just, their life has just been so rough or so whatever, and they end up taking their lives. It's like, man, how do you compare that to somebody that just broke up with some dude in high school? But everybody's brain is different, so they could be very similar and we don't even know. Kendra, what about you? I mean, what have you gone through? What do you bring?
So my experiences have been very different. I suffer from depression and anxiety. I've also suffered from PTSD and suicidal thoughts. So I've had complete opposite spectrum of everything. So I've also had very close friends go through pretty much the same thing. So I've been in a good place and had to help them through it, and also been in a bad place and had to help them through it. So I've had a lot of mental health experiences probably in the past 6 years.
So when it comes down to it, the anxiety part of things, is that completely different than the depression part of things? Or
Yeah.
do they go hand in hand?
They definitely go hand in hand, but it's definitely a different feeling. Depression, and again, this is just my experience.
Right,
Not
of
everybody's
course.
experience is going to be like this, but depression kind of fluctuates, where you can have days where you think, I'm okay, like this is totally fine. And then the next day you're like, I can't do this. I can't get out of bed. My body hurts. I just want to sleep all day. And then anxiety can be caused situationally where something's just happening. Maybe it's work, friends, family. And then sometimes it can just hit you out of nowhere. You can just be sitting with your friends at a bar and all of a sudden you have a panic attack.
And that's the cases I've seen. That's crazy. I'm sure Danny, you're probably going to say the same thing, is being in that moment and then seeing somebody just slowly start freaking themselves out. And that scares the shit out
And
of
it's
me.
a very, if you've ever seen it, it's a very quick change.
It's instant. I've seen them before. It's extremely quick. And I'm just like, how does that happen? Like, what is, like, for me, it's like, I'm like, what's going on inside? Like,
What is that trigger?
Yeah. What body reactions happening? Like what mind body connections happening to where, like you said, a situation where you're just like
Right.
at a bar with your friends and all of a sudden it just happens.
Sometimes it's triggered by something, sometimes it's not triggered by something. And that's the difference between panic attacks and anxiety attacks. One has a trigger and one doesn't. I can't remember which one, though.
When it comes down to it, I mean, what helps in those situations for you personally? So, like, let's say you're having an anxiety attack. What is your go-to to try to just kind of get out of that?
I take medication for it. So if I'm having a full-on anxiety attack, I have to take medication or I won't calm down. 'Cause I'm hyperventilating, I'm crying, I can't get myself back down to normal. It helps if there's somebody there that understands, because if somebody doesn't understand, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to talk to you. They can try, but sometimes it's different each time. One of my very good friends, she has anxiety attacks. Sometimes she wants to be held. Sometimes she doesn't want anybody to touch her. Usually you definitely don't want to be around people. So like getting somebody, if they're at a bar outside, cause obviously you feel like you can't breathe. Drinking water usually helps, just to kind of anything to calm you down, because you're so hyped up and you just can't figure out how to calm down.
That's the part that's crazy to me, is like not being able to figure out how to calm down. So I looked it up. Anxiety is the one with the stressor, and then panic is the one that can just happen. It's unprovoked.
So panic attacks are when you just out of nowhere just get triggered?
It doesn't, like, you don't have
Just
to have
all
a
of a sudden.
stressor. Yeah.
Fuck.
Those are the ones that, like, I can understand anxiety, because like we've all felt like 1% of anxiety when you go in for a test or something, or a job interview or something like that. But that's 1%. That's not like an actual anxiety attack. But a panic attack, like I don't understand those at all. So I wouldn't know what to do. Like you said, there's people who don't understand it. That would just be like, I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah. And then there's so many people too that don't think that anxiety or like panic attacks are really real. So they're just like, well, why can't you just breathe and calm down? And then that makes it worse. Because they're like,
Thanks for helping.
yeah, because they're like, well, what's
Whoa.
they're
So
like,
you're telling me just breathe and calm down? I never even thought of that.
yeah,
Thank goodness you were around.
yeah. Thank you. They're like, well, what's your problem? Like, why can't you just calm down? I don't get it. So then there's people that are completely ununderstanding and just make it worse.
When you're in one of those moments where you feel like you need to take medicine, do you want to avoid taking the medicine where you're like, no, I don't need it? Or do you need somebody to help you take it? Or you're just like, I just need to take it now so I can feel better?
I have to take it.
Like, it's not even like a second, like, you're like, all right, I just need to do this so I
Yeah.
can start.
Because
going
I
down
one time I didn't, And I was in that panic mode for a good 30 plus minutes and couldn't calm down. And the medication takes 30 minutes to kick in. So then I was like that for almost 45 minutes to an hour, hyperventilating, crying, just couldn't breathe, was confused. And so now I know that if that's happening or if I can feel one coming on, that I have to stop it before it happens.
See, I get, Trevor, why you asked that question, because I'm kind of in that same boat. I don't know if I'd want, if I was in your situation, I don't know if I'd want the medication, because I don't know if it's actually helping or if I'm going to end up relying on the medication instead of trying to figure out how to cope with it. But obviously, if you can't, that's why you have the medication, because it's there to help. But
Well, those types of medications are highly addictive too.
yeah, and that would be my concern. Mm-hmm. Well, didn't you say there was a point where they gave you some type of medication to help with one thing? It was depression or something like that, or it wasn't for depression, it was something else, but it caused you to be more depressed?
Yeah, so I suffer from chronic migraines, so I take medication daily to help prevent pain that I'm in. And they gave me a medication, and one of the side effects was severe depression. And that caused me to go into a severe depression and become suicidal.
See, that's crazy. It's like every medication nowadays has a side effect that you need another medication to go against it or to counteract that one. And then that one has a side effect. So it's like this big just circle of just treating a side effect.
What do you do at that point? Do you just take the better of the worst? Right? Like, you gotta...
The lesser of the two evils?
The lesser of the two evils. It's like, all right, this pill does this to me, but this is way worse than that, so I'm going to go this track. Like, what do you do? I mean, Kendra, you're in this boat. You just got put on leave, right? For just kind of help the stress
leave, yeah.
Stress leave. Has that helped at all?
It has. It made me realize how much stress I was under. And definitely situationally, how much stress I'm still under, but it's definitely helped me take a step back to reevaluate everything.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, people don't realize, I don't think a lot of people don't realize how much stress they are under. Like you just said, like taking a step back and realizing how much stress you were under. People don't realize that. I mean, just outside of depression and anxiety, people work too much.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to work, 50 hours a week or 60 hours a week. I mean, all the most, economically successful countries in the world have shorter work weeks than we do and happier people.
Right.
It helps to not be so stressed about someone else's dollar.
Right.
Like that's a huge factor when it comes to just even an average person's stress and anxiety, because it all comes down to money. We've talked about the stress and anxiety money causes.
Right, but then, like you said, it's a circle. You can't get away from it because you can't not work, because then the stress of money comes up, and then what do you do in that situation? So my other question would be those hotlines where you call and talk to somebody or this and that. Do you guys think that actually helps at all? Would you use it if you were in that situation, Danny, Trevor?
I mean, if it helps one person, then I think it serves its purpose, right?
Right.
I mean, if you talk one person off the ledge, then you did your job. I mean, like I said, 1% of the time is enough.
Right. What about you?
I'm a social person, so I would reach out to people. I wouldn't keep it all in. I do keep a lot of things in, like things that are bugging me or things I know that only I have control over. I will keep all that to myself. You could ask Jackie that. I do not like to be like, okay, I'm really stressing about work. I'm really stressing about, passing this test for the state or something like that. Like any of that stuff, I will keep to myself because I know I'm the only person that can control that. But if I knew something was getting out of hand, I would like to think that I would reach out to someone, whether it be a family member or, someone who would understand.
Right. And then I send that same question to you, Kendra. I know for you, you're a very strong individual. So a lot of this, I can imagine you don't really like to talk to people about because you don't want to burden them with it.
Right.
There's a lot. We've had conversations before where you just don't bring certain things up because you don't want to feel like you're venting or something like that. So do you think that has anything to do with kind of the stuff that you've been going through because you don't have that person to really let all these feelings out to?
Yeah, and I think that's why they have like the hotlines and stuff too, is because one of the hardest things about going through these things is when you try and talk to people, they either don't understand or you can get shot down, or they say things like, well, just think about it and be happier. And, I mean, I've gotten all different types of responses.
Do you ever get like, you're looking for attention? Do
Yeah.
you ever get that?
That's like, yeah.
That's I feel like that's an older
Yeah.
generation thing. I feel like that's a lot of older people would do that. They'd be
Like
like,
that's
"Oh, yeah, you're looking for attention."
The
I feel like something
trigger.
like that. If I was going to, I feel like that's something like my parents' generation would say to me.
Right. No. Yeah.
But-
Definitely.
Suck it up, that kind of thing. I hate that. Ugh.
One of my friends and I were actually talking about the suicide hotline, and she had said, I'd never thought about calling that before, but those people are probably the most qualified to talk to. And I was actually looking into it today, and there's seminars and classes you can take to become qualified to be a volunteer to work on the hotline. And another thing that I
So
found,
it's not like an Uber driver. You can't just sign up.
no, you can't just sign up. Yeah, you have to actually go through courses and stuff. Another cool thing that I found, I went to a couple music festivals this summer, and one I went to was just a couple days after Chester Bennington's suicide.
Mhm.
And it was a 3-day festival in LA, and it was at Exposition Park, and they had in the bathroom, they weren't porta potties, thank goodness, but in there were stadium bathrooms, and on the inside of every single door, they had a poster that said something along the lines of, "If you need to talk, we're here to listen." And it was a text line. You text music to this certain number. And it was for any type of abuse, if you had suicidal thoughts, if you had gone through domestic abuse, anything like that. And I thought that that was really cool because there were people of all ages, a lot of youth. So I think that there are a lot of resources out there for people, because the thing about it is it's hard to reach out to people that you know, but you also feel incredibly alone too.
I feel like that would be a hard thing because a lot of people like to think that they have inner strength. They're like, I can handle this, or I don't want to burden anyone else with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like you always think like, oh, why didn't, like, for example, Chester, why didn't he just like reach out and talk to someone? He's got friends and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, a lot of people don't want to put that burden on someone else. I just feel that way. I feel like maybe that's how I would think about it, because I don't like to burden people with, like, if I had money issues or something, I wouldn't want to tell anyone.
Right, and that's something little. I mean, you're saying, oh,
This
I
is
don't
your
want to
life,
burden something.
you know?
With, yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
And that's the
dude.
thing too. You see this all the time, like with soldiers and PTSD. You see, especially this from these last wars, from these Afghanistan and Iraq wars, which aren't conventional wars. I mean, they don't have an enemy. They're fighting the people that they're trying to protect. It's this horrible guerrilla warfare gone wrong, and soldiers can't equate some of the things they're seeing or doing over there, and they're coming back and they're soldiers. They're supposed to be tough. And like, I love military history, so I've studied all that kind of stuff. And I mean, what is it? It's like the newest study is an average of 20 veterans a day, or a day, 20, I had it here. 20 veterans a day.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of people. And it's that are committing suicide. And that's not counting the ones just from this war. That's counting older, 65, 70-year-old guys too. But who's to say that's not linked to what they went through, and if they only had someone to talk to. And we already know how bad the VA is. I mean, they're not taking care of their people. I did research for a paper in college on that, and it's terrible how misrepresented, or not misrepresented, but mistaken care of these people are.
My thing is, how do you condition the younger generation? Obviously, at a certain point, once you get to a certain age, it's hard to change the way you are and kind of reach out to people and stuff like that. If you're not comfortable with that, you're not just going to start doing it in your 30s just because somebody tells you to go do it. It's just like anything else. But to condition the younger generation, to let them know that it is okay to reach out and to talk to people and be a little more open about your feelings and this and that, especially in a world that we live in now, to where everything is so in your face, and there's a lot of more criticism about everything. I mean, look at just with the social media aspect of everything. You can't post something without getting 20 different views on it. Before, it wasn't like that. So I'm sure that doesn't help the way things are now, but with that transition of us being so much more connected and open in the world, I think there needs to be a lot more effort into teaching the youth to be more open about what's going on in their lives and stuff like that. Like you said, having posters on the bathrooms to let people know people are there to listen. but telling them that it's okay to use those, because there's probably a lot of kids out there that don't want to be that kid that's having to make that phone call because they feel like they're not going to be the cool kid for it or anything.
I thought that poster was kind of cool because you said it was a text, right?
Yeah, it was a
You said
text line.
I like that. It's a certain source. It's like anonymity, but you're still reaching out. But you still feel a little bit protected because you're texting and you're not actually calling someone.
And that's
Well, and that's our generation.
yeah,
exactly.
Our generation doesn't want to have a conversation. We want to text.
Yeah, that's called evolution, and what you need to evolve with the times. You can't. It's not about the hotlines anymore or anything like that. It's about what can I get to that's going to not inconvenience me and work. But I don't know, Kendra, for you or your friends or anything like that, growing up, was this something that you've had for a long time, or something that hit you later on in life?
I was probably about 22 when it started. And then just progressively got worse, got better, got worse, got better, got worse. It wasn't something that I dealt with when I was like a teenager or anything like that. I mean, I've definitely lived a great life and have things to be thankful for. And then that's another internal battle that you have. Why can't I be happy when I have all these great things? And yet you still feel a certain way.
I think that's a huge point. I love that you said that, because I think that's what a lot of people think about, is they're like, oh, why am I feeling this way? Everything else is so good around me. I shouldn't be feeling this way.
It's like
and
a self-guilt. It's weird. Yeah.
And it's bringing you down even more, because you're like, oh man, I should be happy. Why aren't I? And then it just start digging a hole. I've been around people that have depression and anxiety and stuff like this, and I notice it, but like Danny was saying, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. You try to put yourself out there for them, but you can only say so much.
Yeah, because it's not something you can really understand unless you experience it. You really can't. Like, I've thought about it. I've tried, like, okay, how did this person reach that point? And you can't. Unless you've been there, you can't understand it.
Kendra, what would you say for the people that are listening that want to help out, especially with it being Suicide Awareness Week and everything, for people on the outside that aren't going through it, what would you say would be the best thing for us to do to help in situations like this? Or if you know somebody that's going through this, what should somebody from the outside do?
I think for people who haven't gone through it and somebody may be reaching out to them, it's an uncomfortable conversation. And that's why people shut down or people don't want to hear it or things like that. And really, if somebody wants to talk, or listen to them. If you don't know what to say, there's tons of websites. There's suicideispreventable.org that talks a great way about how to talk to somebody who is contemplating suicide, the things to say, the things not to say. eachmindmatters.org. They are California's national health movement, and there's great resources on there about the different mental health issues that people may have, because a lot of times it's more than one. And just be understanding, because that's really what I find is the most thing that happens. Like I say, a lot of people come and they're just like, well, why can't you just feel better or think better? And it's the same thing as telling like a type 1 diabetic, well, just think about producing more insulin and you'll be better, because, and it doesn't work that way. And people think it does. I know a lot of people that don't think mental health is real. They don't understand why you're having a bad day or why can't you just snap out of it. So I think if people were more understanding, then things would be a lot different.
I could see where people would think that depression is like a placebo effect. Like you're creating it. It's not a real thing. Mm-hmm. Like if you just wake up tomorrow and say you're going to be happy, you're going to be happy. But that's not necessarily how it works, because your brain is a amazing muscle and it does its own thing. Trevor, do you have any questions or anything? I mean,
I'm just really just listening and just trying to figure out. I mean, I've been pretty fortunate and I have to be a part of any of these situations. So it's always, great to hear ways and places to go if that situation ever does arise. I mean, like I said, I have 2 young ones that, it could happen to them.
Yeah. That's the crazy thing about it, is you really don't know what people are thinking or what they're going through unless they come out and actually say something to you and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. And then they want to talk about it. But without them wanting to talk about it, you really don't know. It's a lot of this is a lot of closet stuff. Things that people go through on their own. Like for myself, my darkest moments are when I'm showering by myself. Nobody else is in there, but when I'm in there, I have my worst of days, but it's in the shower.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it. Well, until now. Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, I know. I had a question. So since I don't know a whole bunch about this, is this something that can be just like, since you sound like you've done research on it, you had all these websites and all this knowledge, I was like, wow, we really don't research our topics compared to this. Okay, so do you know if it's more, the question, is it more genetic or can it be anybody?
I think
what
both.
is there one that there's more of, or
not necessarily. One thing that I did see was like the biggest group is males 35 to 65.
I talked about
Danny's
this.
Day.
Yeah, they make up. It said something like they make up 19% of population, but they make up 40% of suicides.
Any other
Really?
stat.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's
Any
the one
other stat.
stat I pulled out.
Yeah.
Damn it.
But I haven't looked into if I'm sure it could be hereditary, and I'm sure it can be situationally. Like I said, I've had it before where it was situationally, and I've had it before where it was medically because of a medication I was taking. So that I'm not particularly sure.
Yeah, I believe it could be
You
both.
straight up set up that question because you
I
wanted
did not.
her to.
I really didn't even think about that. But she started bringing the stats. I was like, she's going to talk about men this age.
Let
I
me
know
just
it.
slide this
Yeah.
in there.
Well, it's like that. It's that divorced banker guy who's just got nothing going for him and is super stressed out about his money and having to pay all the alimony. We've talked about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I also read it's hard for them to get statistics because people don't seek help because they think I'm going to get better. I can do this by myself. And especially for the youth, it takes them on average 6 to 8 years to get help.
This all falls back to, remember when I was sitting there saying that schools need to have a class that is literally like therapy for each student? That would change everything. You'd be forced to get help, even if nothing's going wrong. Even if you're fucking the happiest kid in the world. You're still going to have a bad day and you're going to want to talk about it, and you're probably going to feel better after
Don't
you
talk about
it.
funding, Trevor.
If you freaking bring up
At
funding,
Aaron School, they do offer it to kids.
see? It should be mandatory.
But then, like you said, then it falls back on that whole stigma thing. It falls back on like, oh, you're that kid that went.
That's
and
what I'm
talked,
saying.
You know what
Make
I
it
mean?
Yeah, there's very
mandatory.
much a negative stigma on it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
that's the problem.
You think it would make a difference, Kendra? If it was mandatory to where kids literally had to go talk to a counselor for even 15 minutes a day, you think it would make a difference?
I mean, I want to say yes, but 15 minutes definitely isn't enough time
Long-form
because I've also
conversation.
Well,
Yeah.
I only said
Because-
15 minutes because Trevor was going to bring up funding, and we don't have the money for 20 minutes.
because I've also been in counseling before too. So
Does it help? So someone that's actually been in it, did it help at all?
So I was in counseling in a time where I wasn't in like a deep depression or anything, but situationally I needed to talk to someone about what was going on in my life, and it did. It gave me.
Was that at a point where there just wasn't somebody else you could talk to, so was that like last resort, or you just felt like that's where you wanted to go with it?
I had so many things going on in my life, and I had so many voices in my ear that I needed something that wasn't convoluted to help me get over a bridge.
Right. And that's another thing too, is I could imagine if you seek out help for the wrong people, or like your friends around you that maybe not know what you're going through and they only see a certain side of you, that it might be better to go to a counselor and just tell them exactly what's going on and actually spill your guts, and not just to, like, we all have our different lives. We see each other here. We're all friends, but we don't really know exactly what's going on. The minute you are yourself by yourself, that's a different person than the person that's sitting here at this table right now. So to be able to kind of spill yourself to somebody that's an outsider might help. I don't know.
It's almost like there's more of a sense of privacy that way.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you don't know that person. Like you said, like going to a family member might be harder. It might, because you're like, oh, this person knows a lot of stuff about me, and now they're going to see that I was thinking about things differently, and then what are they going to think
gonna
of
judge me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Talk about causing more stress than necessary.
Yeah.
Still think that the school thing's a good idea. I'm going to throw that out there. But
Trevor's now up to 18 minutes and 37 seconds per session. He found a little bit of money that was squirreled away. So
I can't imagine how it couldn't help. It only makes sense, especially for the younger kids, because like you said, they offer it. Obviously, they're offering it for a reason, because it can help. But if they made it mandatory, I think the numbers would be insane of how much it would help.
Yeah.
And imagine what they would catch. I mean, you got that. Young kids say the darndest things. There's a whole show about it.
There's truth behind everything.
Could you imagine a kid going into school and be like, my daddy punched my mom in the face? And it's like, there's my 15 minutes. The freaking teacher would be like, okay, we got to look into this. But if they're never going to say anything about it, like you said, it takes 6-7 years for anybody to even realize they need to talk to somebody. That might be too late at that point.
Yeah. And something needs to be done about it too. I was just, while we were sitting here, I didn't know how many people commit suicide a year. And I just Googled it. And the first thing that pops up on Google, I don't know how accurate it is, so fact check me, listeners. But it says every year 34,000 people commit suicide. It says about twice as many deaths caused by homicide. It's about a death per 15 minutes. And by 2030, depression will outpace cancer, strokes, war, and accidents as the world's leading cause of disability and death, according to the World Health Organization.
Holy smokes.
What the heck?
How do you figure that though?
And here's the thing.
Extrapolating. It has to be extrapolating stats.
And here's the thing too, is like people think that depression is just, oh, you're sad or you're really sad, but you can't mentally function. Sometimes you can't get out of bed. Your body physically hurts. You don't want to be around people. You don't even want to be around people that you love. It hurts relationships. There's so many factors that go into it then, other than just an emotional aspect of it. It's physical too.
The physical part of things is, I've seen that. It really changes the person completely, and it takes it to where their mindset of, oh, I'm having a bad day turns into, oh, I'm literally sick and I can't do anything. And you don't know how to help that. You can't, because at that point you literally are sick. And how do you help that? You just go and take more medication, and who knows if that's actually helping or making it worse.
Well, and then people can also try and treat it other ways with drugs, alcohol, and then you have people that are turning that way, that are treating it not the right way, but that's something that temporarily makes them feel better.
Yeah, and it probably exacerbates the situation.
Yeah, especially if you're on medication.
Yeah, because chemicals it probably creates a huge chemical imbalance that way.
What about, okay, so we've been talking about the whole depression side of things, the anxiety side of things, the suicide part. We haven't really got really deep into that. And that's something I'm curious about also, is at what point does it get to it's not worth it anymore, it's better off without me? Because that's what I would, is it the whole, everybody would be better off without me? Or is it, I just don't want to be here anymore?
I want the pain to stop.
Or
I think it's all of it.
A little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard when you don't know how that feels. For me, it's just so hard.
This is the big argument that comes from it. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because we're having this topic is suicide selfish or not? And that's the big argument. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious. To me, I think it's a selfish act, because like I said at the beginning, your actions affects others regardless if you think they do or they don't. But it's also, everybody, you're in control of your own life, so you get to make that decision. If you want to be here, you get to choose if you want to be here or not. So, me personally, this is just how I feel. I've always felt this way. I think it's a selfish act, but I'm not bullheaded enough to believe that people don't have their own issues, and maybe some people just are having it that bad to where they feel like they just can't be here anymore. I'm not going to think bad about somebody for having those thoughts, but my personal feelings, I think it's a selfish act. What do you guys think?
When I was down in LA after Chester's suicide, there was this guy on the train. We were on the metro, and he was talking about it because somebody was playing a Linkin Park song. And he was like, man, he was my guy. He's like, but fuck that dude. He was like, he's not a man to me anymore. Like, he's so selfish, and just saying all these negative things about him, and it really bothered me because I'm like, you have no idea what he was going through, what he was thinking, feeling.
Right.
This may be more controversial. I don't necessarily think it's a selfish act. Only coming from someone who's thought about it, because you're thinking about everybody at that point, because you don't think you're good enough. You think that everybody's going to be better off without you. You think about how they're going to be better off without you. You think about, like, yeah, everybody's going to be sad, but they're going to get over it eventually. And you think about how life will be better for everybody else. And to actually, like, commit that act, I think you kind of have to be a little bit brave to do that, because that's taking your own life.
Right.
Yeah, because for me, I think that, like, we're outside the fence, obviously.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
we're not inside it. For me, I would think that the last thing that would stop me from doing it would be, I don't want to hurt the people I love by being gone. But then I hear her side of it, and it's like, well, maybe that person's thinking of it not the way I'm thinking of it, because I'm not, you know, I don't have.
You feel like
all
you're
that
already
going
hurting
on.
them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's the part I just, like, thought about for the first time, is like, okay, so I wouldn't want to hurt the people I love, but maybe in this frame of mind and going through all that, I'm thinking it's a good thing that I won't be hurting them anymore by them seeing me suffer or something like that. It's like a reverse. It's a reverse. Like, it's weird. I don't.
Yeah, you're in such a different mind state that you think that they would be better off eventually.
That's what's hard for the three of us, is because we've never had these thoughts, so it's hard for us to voice our opinions in that
I mean,
sense.
that's why it's an opinion.
Yeah,
Voice
but
it.
everybody's going to have their opinion, and that's okay.
But I think hers is the most truest, because she has had these thoughts, and that's why she said it might be controversial to me to say that. It's not selfish, because to us it's like, oh, that's selfish, because why would they do that to us?
Right.
Well, why would they do that to me? Oh, that was my best friend, or that was my family member. Like, why would they do that to me? Because we're thinking of it from our point of view.
But this is where I'm coming from. I'm gonna stand my ground on this. I mean, as much as obviously Kendra definitely has the truest point of view, because she's gone through it, she's going through it. But I also have the point of view of being that family member or that person that's losing someone. I would never want them to feel like their burden was ever big enough or emotionally enough or a burden on me to where you would need to take your life to make my life easier. So for her to, or for anyone to sit there and feel like, oh, me not being here is going to be easier on them, so I should just not be here anymore. I'm here to say, no, that's bullshit. There's nothing, not a thing in the world that would make your life any more important to me or any more important than mine. So I would never want you to take your life thinking you're doing me a favor. If you're into depression, yeah, that's one thing. Obviously, you're going through that, but to take your own life for it is just something I could never stand behind, and I would be devastated. And I don't think anybody would ever get over that. Like you said, Kendra, there's eventually people would get over it. I don't think people do. Maybe they won't be thinking about it every single day, but at some point something is going to come up and it's going to make them think about it, and it's not going to make their day better. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, it goes like you said, it's a reverse. Everybody's thinking about the other person, but at the end of the day, it's your life. And I mean, you wouldn't be going through all these steps of trying to make yourself better, taking medication, reaching out to people if you didn't want to live your life. I mean, obviously it might get to the point where you hit that day and you're just over it, but know that there is people out that want to help, and you got to keep trying. There's never a point where it's worth it, to me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree with that. It's just, unfortunately for some people, they don't have that.
Yeah. And I think with this episode, I think the way we can leave it is we want all the listeners to know that there are people here out there that want to listen to you, are here for you. Whether we're friends or not, I'm going to put myself out there. Find me on Facebook. If you need to talk about anything, I'm here. We're here. The good, the bad, and the ugly. That's all for today's episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast on SoundCloud or iTunes to get all updates on future content. And just remember, it's not important who's right or wrong, but it's always important to ask why.